All right, Clint from the doorway too, hanging out with Matty from Golgothon Remains. So we're hanging out with the vocalist today. That's pretty cool. So can you tell me a little bit about how the band first started?
G'day, Clint. Thanks for having us on your show. For starters, it's an honour. The band started many years ago. I actually only joined later on, but our guitar player Matt and Alec, our drummer, they founded the bands like, as I said, like quite a few moons ago, jamming together. So a lot of the ideas that we're actually still working with today stem from that time. So that's how it all began. And then, I joined in 2017 after the first vocalist moved to the UK. And then we've got a new bass player, Adam, since a couple of years. So that's basically the lineup we have at the moment.
Cool. So I've never heard the demo, so no loss there. I've never heard anything but you do vocals, so there you go. But I'm going to start off with the first album, Perverse Offerings, because that was the second record I heard. So Adorn was the first one I heard. I kind of went backwards. So I kind of want to talk about the two because there's a lot of similarities and there's one particular difference that I personally hear. And I don't know if you're going to agree or not agree, but this is kind of where the conversation begins. So I feel like the first record, Perverse Offerings, is more of a kind of, it has a grindier, more black metal elements, not so much death metal. Where I feel the new record has a lot of kind of noisy and death metal elements. So can you kind of talk to me about how the first album came about? And do you feel you were more a black metal band then, or do you feel like you've always kind of been a mixture of everything?
It's a very interesting observation that you made there because for me personally, I think the black metal elements are more substantiated, like in the foreground at this album, at the new album, and on Adorn and Ruin, whereas like Perverse Offerings was more straightforward death metal. However, I mean, of course, like a lot happened between the albums. Like, you know, as I said, we had a lineup change as well. There was COVID, so there was a lot of delay between that. So I think there's definitely bit of a change in twist, like a twist in styles between those two. But I would even say that the like that Adorned and Ruined, the new album, is more a mixture of that black and death metal, and the first one is actually more death metal.
That's cool, man. We all hear a little bit different stuff, right? That's kind of the way the world is. The reason why I say the first record's more kind of black metal is I feel like there's more of a raw quality and there's a lot more atmosphere on the new record where I feel like the death metal tones really come through. And your vocals, to me, are much harsher on the first record. This record, they kind of have more of a atmospheric kind of grindy, crusty kind of vibe. Like I kind of really dig the way they're going on this new record. So let's talk about that. The vocal styles from the first record to the second record, because that's one of the things that are kind of different to me listening to the first record to this record.
Yeah, so they are quite different because I didn't record the vocals on the first album. So basically, that was still done by the
Right.
first vocalist who kind of left before the album was released. So yeah, so we didn't re-record vocals at that point, but I did all the shows that we played for that one. Now, our styles are quite similar in the fact that we have both that low guttural
Hmm.
grunt and like barking style, short cut off. Yeah, grunt at times to put the emphasis on certain aspects of a song. But I think the main difference is that I put a more screaming and diverse vocal style or vocal range to this new album because I really like to experiment with different styles and I like to change things up every now and then. It's definitely different. You can definitely hear it between the two albums. But I think we kept the same style in general, as in like that death metal brutal vocal style. We kept that the same, but we just spiced it up a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, tonality, it's very similar. I'm not going to disagree at all. But yeah, your vocal range is much more expansive, and that's why I said it's kind of atmospheric at times too. And then yeah, the shrieks are much more powerful on this record than the other one. I kind of want to talk about the band as a whole too, because the two records again have a lot of commonplace. They have a lot of similarities, but on this one, there's almost kind of like, now maybe I'm hearing it and you don't, but there's more of kind of like a machine industrial kind of sci-fi element on this record to me. And I don't know if that's just kind of happened, but you can hear it in the background with kind of almost the noises and the sounds and the like the feedback that goes on, where you kind of adding more of a, it's not industrial, it's more just machine-like is the best way I can explain it.
Again, it's like an interesting observation. That's what I like. Why people do reviews of an album that you've written and listened to like a million times, because then these new observations come to the table. Now to answer, like, I think your first question there was it's basically because all the riffs, like all the main structures, they're all done by a guitar player, by Matt, and then a drum pattern is set up. So basically from the beginning, from the band until today, that's basically how the music comes together. So there's that very steady way of working on it, like especially riff-wise. Now in regards to a bit of a change in like, industrial or like noise-like style, we did not do that on purpose, for sure. But but it is again, it's interesting to hear that. It's maybe because the production is a bit different than to the first album. Like we just like try to have a bit of a more, let's say, less polished maybe sound, like a little bit more murky one, which brings out some different tones that we're not put in there on purpose, but we're just like come out a bit more due to that change in production.
Cool. So there's a couple of bands that I kind of reference to when I tell my friends about this record, that if you like this stuff, you're definitely gonna dig Golgothon Remains. Two of the bands, so I kind of, this is the best way I describe it. I'm like, just imagine you go to see Immolation and Tomb Mold and they get into a fucking fist fight. Like that's kind of what it reminds me of, because you have this very old school 90s death metal feel to you, but you have that like disgusting, dirty, modern death metal that Tomb Mold, like those vomit vocals and really noisy. Now, when you were creating this new record specifically, were you trying to get that dirtier sound? Because from the first record to the second record, I feel like there's a lot of atmosphere, but it's also nastier.
I think we were definitely going to go further with what we created with the first album. Mm-hmm. There was no change that we're going to change up styles or something like that. So we definitely were going to work further on that. Now we really like that, and I think you nailed it there with that comparison between like that old school death metal sound, but also their new modern look of death metal that we have at the moment, which we all really like. Their mixture, that blend of those two, is something that we like. So I think for this record we did on purpose, whereas like the first one was probably a little bit more hit and miss here and there. This one we definitely did that more on purpose, like actively seek out those, like a nice blend of those different styles, and as we mentioned before, also just try to make it a bit more diverse in certain ways. So I think you put it very well there.
Nice.
So yeah, that's definitely a good one.
Cool. So on the black metal side, I kind of want to dig a little deep in this because I hear very particular tones, and I don't know if you guys are fans of it or not, but again, this is what I'm hearing, so I love having these kind of diatribes with both of us. I hear a lot of like mid to modern Finnish black metal, particularly. So like bands like Anarchy and Crescent or Horna, like, and the reason why is Finnish black metal has this very special place in my heart where it has this cold melody, but it's super harsh at the same time. And the guitars and drums, especially on Adorn, it's like there's this crazy, I don't know, like bizarre atmosphere on the guitars, and the drums try and match it. So like when it's total chaos, the drums are total chaos. When it's really melodic, the drums slow down and kind of build this melody. So when you do your vocals, are you just all out all the time, or are you following the guitars and drums and trying to put a melody to it? So that's kind of why I was asking is the Finnish black metal, the singer is very much, which I feel you're doing, kind of follow along to more what the rhythm's going on than so much the melody.
Right. I really like I really like the very specific comparison to Finnish black metal. I'm a big Horner fan myself, so
Nice.
So I can definitely I definitely understand that one. Now I do tend to follow the rhythm more instead of the melody, definitely. I definitely try to create or did not trying to create a pattern which was way to like just following the melodies and the guitars and like just going on that 4/4 rhythm like all the time. So to try again, excuse me, to try to like diversify things a little bit. Now, in regards to influences, like I'm a big black metal fan myself. So I'm very and then especially French black metal for me. So I understand that you're like Finnish, so I'm like French black metal. But so I think like I've been like there's a lot of influences from black metal on my vocals. And then definitely also like in writing and like vocal phrasing, I would definitely say there's a big angle when that I have in my head when I'm writing, and I think breaking loose out of that very melodic following pattern is definitely something that I did on purpose there as well, and yeah. So yeah, cool. I agree with that one.
So that's funny because this was the very next place I was going to come, and you kind of threw it out beforehand. There's a specific band I feel like you are very akin to, musically, and ironically, it's a French band. Blut Ars Nord. All right.
Okay.
So I feel like vocally you are very similar to when they are more experimental, not so black metal, more experimental. Yeah. I feel the music is very when they go full on kind of black noise. Mm-hmm. And I know that people hate that term, but I would call you the closest thing in death metal to black noise I've ever heard in my life, because there are points in time on this record that there is no melody, there is no light, there is just pain and noise. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, was that done on purpose as well on this record specifically? Because that's where the noisy elements really come in, is on the new record, not so much on the first record. Were you trying to add like noise elements to it, or did that just happen with the tones that were going on?
I think it definitely just happened. It wasn't done on purpose. I definitely do see where you're coming from with that one. We all did not just want to follow a pattern that was already done, and try to like change things up a bit. But that part was definitely not done on purpose. But I can see where you're coming from with that one, because it's just like trying to create a bit more of a diverse atmosphere, both music and vocal wise.
Cool. So the other thing I want to talk about is on Adorn, especially, there are these moments that like you have the most brutal riff and vocal melodies, like moments going on, and then all of a sudden this pure melodic tone comes in out of nowhere, and then it goes like, it may be 10 seconds, it may be 15 seconds, and then it goes back to the most fucking brutal like guitar riff I've ever heard in my life. When you are writing songs, is it more emotion or is it more technical? Because I really feel like you are 50-50, a very emotional band and a very technical band. So kind of explain the writing process on that side.
I think it all starts with the technical part. So the start of the writing process is very on the technical part. There's a couple of riffs lying around, in someone's head, and you try to work out, just the technical part on the riff side. You try to get it together. You try to get a bit of a drum pattern on it. I think the emotional side comes in later, when you start to play it through as a band together, and everyone puts in their couple of points, or what they want to do with it, and then just things kind of form itself, and that's where that emotional side comes in, because you're you don't have to focus anymore on, am I actually be able to play this riff, or do I know that vocal phrasing? No, you know it, and then you can follow through with whatever we want to put in it, which is more the emotional side. So that's what that's how it starts. As I said before, a lot of the songs just start with Matt and I trying to figure out things, or just sometimes with a bunch of riffs. So it's definitely first that writing process that we have to follow through, and then the emotional part would come in. From my perspective personally, it's sometimes a bit the other way around. Sometimes I just write a bunch of lyrics on a sad Saturday night, and then months or years later, that will then translate itself into an actual song lyric. So for me personally, sometimes it's different, but the music side is more the technical comes first, and then there would be some emotion in there.
So so cool. That's awesome. It's definitely a mix of both. You can hear it, and that's the really cool part about the band. All right. So I always like to ask some oddball questions that are just they're not so much about the band as I just kind of want to know about your thought processes. So let's say it's 1993 or 94, okay? And Golgothon Remains is playing around, and you have two options. You can either sign with Relapse or you can sign with Nuclear Blast. Which one and why?
I like that one. It's so hard to answer these questions pretending that you don't know anything will happen. I would say at that point in time, would probably go with Relapse, for sure. I can't really tell you why, but I just bands that were released on that label, just the label in general, as always spoken to me, and by extension to everyone in the band. Nuclear Blast to a certain extent, but probably not as much. And then that's why I said, if you then know what they have become today, I definitely not go for them.
Well, I feel like you have a lot more akin to early Relapse stuff too. That's kind of why I was saying I think you and early Incantation would have been a goddamn sick ass tour, because early Incantation does very much what you did with taking the black metal out of things. That's kind of the way I feel about it. So you make me happy when I hear the word Relapse, because early Relapse death metal is brilliant. Early Nuclear Blast death metal, that was very hit or miss. There was some really sad moments there. But no, very cool. So another question I'm going to ask, and I kind of want to really know, because I'm kind of really interested. So Australia, it's kind of really isolated. There's some great bands there. I've been friends with bands. I've played with bands that have come over here, but how do you get the sound that you get from being in such an isolated nation where a lot of bands don't tour, a lot of bands don't come? Is there a strong local scene right now that's doing kind of really avant-garde black death metal going on in your area?
There's a few things to that. I mean, there's the isolation part. We're on the other side of the world when you compare it to the States or Europe. Of course, I mean, you can even go further, which is New Zealand. But anyway, but yeah. So there of course, we've got, due to the internet nowadays, it's everything is heaps more accessible. Mm-hmm. Now we weren't around personally when things were not that accessible, but I know of bands or people from the scene who like were actively involved in the tape trading and all that. And then you had bands like Sadistic Execution that kind of an institute all over the world in a time when there was no internet and where you had to send a tape around the world by Australia Post, which would take 3 months, which nowadays is sometimes still the case, but anyway.
Yes.
But the local scene has been always very important for countries like Australia and by extent any isolated country or scene, excuse me, because one band will kind of pick up an influence from like some overseas band, try to like start to blend that into the music, and other bands would pick that up as well, and basically like create a little bit of a own change of style in their scene. So that's basically what happened a fair bit. Now at the moment you still have that. There is still that strong local scene. There's a bunch of cool local bands, less so in that death black metal, more obscure wave that we would play, without being very specific. But like there's a bit of there's not that many around who do it. But there is definitely still a strong scene, but maybe like less experimental than what it used to be when there was like less access to overseas bands.
Cool. Awesome. So next question is going to kind of mix it up again a bit. So you're in Australia. How the hell did you sign the Sentient Ruin? Like, I just like, that is like the polar opposite side of the world for you. Like, did you send them a demo? Did they hear you? Like, how did this happen? The label's amazing and they have so many great artists on it. But I just wonder like how a smaller label like that found you or you found them.
It's been an absolute pleasure working with them. For starters, they've been so professional, so good for us. So it's been very smooth as well. It's been amazing. They actually reached out to us to repress the Verse Offerings to the Void album, so like the first one, which was originally a self-release on CD. Which then became an Australian release through Impure Sounds, 100 copies on vinyl, which sold out pretty quickly. And then Sentient Ruin, together with Nuclear Winter, re-released the Perverse Offerings to the Void LP, which was a great success, great collaboration. Absolutely, it was a great experience for us. Once it became known that we were working on new material, they reached out again, saying that they were very interested in releasing the new album. And then, after a bit of discussions and due to the amazing experience that we have had with them before, and as you mentioned before, like the bands that they have are like just like fucking killer. So we just went ahead with it, and again, it's like great release process, and that's how it all came along, basically.
Cool. So there's 2 songs on the new record that I want to talk to you about specifically. They're the ones that are my favorites. And I kind of want to know the process, your thoughts, patterns on it, kind of how the songs became. So the first one is The Malignant Hordes of Abhorrence. Okay. And the reason why I like these 2 songs is they encompass all of your influences in these songs. They're not just bits and pieces. Like, I feel like if you listen to this song, you'll understand what Golgothon Remains is. All right. So the other one is On Lifeless Wings of Malice. All right. Those 2 songs by far and away are the 2 that I keep going back to over and over and over again. Yes, they're different. I understand they're not the same song, but I'm also that guy that likes albums with diversity. So kind of explain about the first one, and then if you can go into the second one as well, kind of talk about how they were created and what they mean to you.
I think they're both excuse me, like them together are like a great example of the amount of time, like not an example, like they basically prove the amount of time that was spent on writing this record. Not therefore always intentionally, but as I said, like we had COVID, which delayed a lot of things. But basically, when you talk about the Malignant Horns of Abhorrence, which was written like a long time ago, then put together and finalized also a long time ago, but more towards recording, whereas like on Lifeless Wings of Malice was the last one we finalized for the album. And I think you can really tell because the last one has more like, you can kind of tell the diversity that we have with the new lineup. Whereas like it's the same lineup who wrote and like recorded it, but a very long time apart. And you can really tell that we came together heaps more since then, since writing the earliest songs of the album, I would say, and that we've like very gone through like some kind of evolution, one could say, in like putting together the last song, which has a blend of a lot more influences than the earlier ones, I would say.
Cool. So I am going to throw a couple of band names out to you, and I kind of want to get your feedback on this. If you don't know them, you don't like them, be honest, be fair. Like, that's really what I want. Because there's a couple of older bands that I'd like to kind of see what your thought processes are on, because I feel like they're big influences. They may not be, but they, all right. Again, I'm going to jump to Finland because I have this death metal and black metal love of Finnish bands. All right. So Demigod, have you heard them? Do you like them? Do you know them?
I personally don't. However, this may be something that Matt, our guitarist, would be interested in, because I know his influences are very diverse. But for me personally, no. I know them. I know the name. I've never been really into them. Yeah.
No problem. They have one record and only one record. So that's
go.
yeah. So it's back in the early 90s. It's like to me, it's where black doom and death metal got extreme for the very first time. So that's kind of why I love it. The other one is Ulcerate. I feel like there is a kinship between your two bands where the technical and avant-garde sides really kind of mesh. I don't know if you like them or know them either. So
I know them. I'm not a huge fan, but I definitely know them. I never looked at it that way, but I mean, I guess I should have an in-depth review again of their music to kind of see that. I like it when people like, you know, come up with these like with these references, like comparisons, basically, because it like opens your mind to like different things. One band that I actually think
sure,
kind of like it's like a more newer Finnish death metal band called Kamos.
Yeah.
So that is one that when you mentioned Finland before, that was like a little bird came into my head, and I'm like, that's what he's going to say. But that is what I think it's not really like a big influence on the band as a whole, but it's a band that you can definitely like compare us with.
You can hear influences absolutely in a very good way. Cool. Then I'm gonna go to a very obvious kind of like Demlich. So I don't know if like you, like, I swear to God, like if you were a band 20 years ago, that's what you would be. Like they just kind of have the same vibe as you, the same sound, the same kind of ugliness, but 20 years earlier. Like that's kind of the way. I don't know if you like them as well or not. So
it's one that it's not, again, like it's not one that we are like all like you're like usually into, but one that's definitely been, you know, on the rotation every now and then. So I could definitely, you know,
cool.
Yeah, but it's not one band that we really had in mind, like, you know, that really influenced the writing process.
Nice. All right. So in the writing process of the new record, when you said it's been quite a while, how many years was it in the making to be able to get to this record?
So there's been, it depends a little bit on what song you're talking about, but I know there's like quite a few riffs that were used on this album were actually written like years and years and years ago. And with years and years, I mean like 10 years ago. And then they've just been gathering dust on the shelf, where then like some of them were used for like Perverse Offerings, some were used for this one. So from that aspect, some of the songs are technically pretty old.
Okay.
But then I think we started working on new material very shortly after Perverse Offerings was released, which was in 2018. So then, we went through a bit of a lineup change. We also like did some touring, or like played quite a bunch of shows on the back of Perverse Offerings. So that took up a bit of our time as well. I think by the time we were like ready to record the new album, by that time COVID hit. So we had to put everything, on the shelf again. By the time we were then ready to re-record, or like to record actually, after COVID, like when COVID subsided a little bit, depressing plans had like delays 12 to 18 months, which meant that it's been more than a year since we recorded it finally, and that it's been finally released on the 1st of April. So and then there were like a few hiccups along the way, which always happens. But that's basically how long we've been working on this. So the good thing is that is that we've also used some of that time that we were just waiting on things, or that we couldn't do anything, that we started writing new material already to basically anticipate a follow-up, or like at least some new music without that gap of 4 years.
Cool. Yeah. Same thing happened to me. I'm signed to a label in the UK called Aesthetic Death, and my album was supposed to come out in November of 2021, came out in February of this year. So I totally understand like how long and how much time it took to be able to do that. Just a couple more questions, and then I'll let you be on your way. So if I was to ask you, between the two records, Perverse Offering and Adorn, if I know you didn't sing on it, but if there was anything different you could do on either one of them, what would it be and why?
Right. That's an interesting one. I think I'll talk about Adorn first, because that's one that I was involved with, of course. I think what we could have done differently, maybe make it a little bit, even though we did it on purpose to diversify it as much as we could, maybe do it a little bit less here and there, instead of like trying to jump on a few too many different angles here and there. Can't really give you like an exact example of what I mean, which is at the moment, but just like sometimes just like make it a little bit more consistent, I would say, instead of like having that, still keeping it diverse, of course, but like still having it a little bit too much here and there. Probably more of like at like micro level, like here and there. With Perverse, again, like I didn't record that one, so I don't really know. However, it was the first album after a self-released small demo, so it was all very new for most of the band members. So even though some of them had recorded albums before, for this band it was just like all new. So it was a bit of a trial and error, I would say. So there have been like a few things that afterwards we would have done differently, going from artwork details through like recording and production wise things. So yes, there have been a few things for Perverse as well that were like in hindsight. For Adorn and Ruin, I would say like a few of the songs were like maybe a little bit too complex in like that, trying to change styles a little bit too much, which may confuse some people, like which may people just do not like, which I would understand. So I think we should have kept it a bit more concise. But other than that, so far, because it's only been released a couple of weeks, but maybe we come up with some more. But that's so far, that's like the only like reflection that we have had.
So I don't know how it is in Australia, but things are finally starting to open up here where we can actually have shows. Actually, on Monday, I'm getting to go see Exodus, Death Angel, and Testament. They're doing a U.S. tour, and I'm just super ecstatic because it's like, it's like my little thrash metal. I'm 49, so it's like my thrash metal dream tour. Like I'm just like very like hell yeah, let's go. But are you playing live now, or is it still kind of closed down where you are right now?
No, so it's all opened up a lot over the last months. In general, we've always had, it was always quite all right in Australia, until we had like that second wave, which kind of like hit very hard. But after that, yeah, so everything's been, opening up for a few months. We started to play live since a few weeks again. So like shows have been organized again. There's no restrictions. People can stand up, etc., etc. So there's a bunch of shows that are being organized at the moment. I think everyone wants to catch up. So we did play a couple the last weeks. We have a few lined up. Probably like going to do East Coast tour in Australia in the next few months on the back of the new album. So we're organising that at the moment. So that's cool. It's all very national at the moment because international bands, they are being scheduled to come back to Australia later this year. I think it's quite expensive at the moment. Flights are pretty expensive due to cut. I don't know, whatever. Due to airlines just like cutting the budgets and stuff like that. So flights are pretty expensive. So I think bringing out international bands may be a bit complicated. So at the moment we have a very, very lively local live scene with a lot of just local bands playing live. So it's great. I'm actually going to see a couple tonight. So that's good. And also especially the fact that we can play again, which is great after 2 years of like almost not playing. I think we did 3 or 4 shows between 2020 and 2022. So yeah.
Cool. So live versus record, what would a fan see different with Golgothon Remains?
We're a very strong live band. Personally, I think we're a very strong live band in the sense that it's a very no nonsense, but there's a lot of stage persona on stage. So it's very atmospheric in the sense that it's just a wall of sound. There's no nonsense. There's no jokes, like sometimes a small one, but no real banter. It's like you've got that wall of sound that comes just towards you, with some drama on stage created by the music and the vocals. I think live, a lot of people actually have told us before that they've seen us live and they're like, whoa, this is great, and then go on and check out the album or buy the album. So I think, which I do understand, because I would say personally that when you would see us live, it's quite an influence. Like it's quite impressive, as in like there's a lot of like things that come to you that and then when you then later on listen to the album, then that's easy to process. The other way around, it's probably different, I would say, from when you listen to the albums and then see us live. I think maybe people wouldn't expect it to be like that. Maybe they would. I don't know. I haven't really heard that many people like having it the other way around and being like surprised or something. But I think like especially when you haven't heard from us before, see us live and then go onto the record, that is a good way to do it. Anyway, I've kind of lost track a little bit here, but
no, that's fine.
Do what I can say about it.
So would you say that live is a heavier, noisier experience? Is there more melody live? Or would you say that the records are more bombastic? Like, is there any differences? Like if I pulled out the record after I saw you live, what kind of feedback have you gotten?
I would say live is more heavier.
Okay.
In the sense that I think it goes for a lot of bands because you can put all your body language and your passion into it, whereas like on a record it's more like you don't really know the band behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And live playing also comes with its beauty spots, in the sense that someone makes a mistake, or like you see someone almost tripping over, which like kind of shows that the people behind that band as well. You know, it's not like it's like Metallica, but like, you know, it's like heaps more personal, I would say. We all personally like really love playing live. This band would not exist if it would be like a studio band. Absolutely not. So we put a lot of effort in that live effort, like in that live experience or like performance. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So last question. I asked this to every single band. I always get interesting rebuttals to it, so I kind of really want to see what you're going to say. If you could have any band or artist take one of your songs, re-record it, and make it their own, what band would you want to try to have that done?
That's a very hard one. I mean, I mentioned it before. Like, I'm a very big French black metal fan, and specifically bands like Aosoth, Merrimack, Hell Militia, which is all a bit like the same scene.
Yeah.
And I note especially Aosoth, like riff-wise, like guitar-wise, sometimes have some comparison to like the more slower melodic riffing that we use or like that we have. So I would pick them just to know what they would do with something from us, and whether they would like kind of consider it kind of similar, but just on a much faster tempo.
Gotcha.
The song, I would say, I think one of the songs that I feel personally most connected to is the opening track, is Federation of Carnal Blasphemy, which is, yeah, so like that's one of the ones that for me stand out on that album. Also because it's just like, yeah, I just feel personally connected to it. So I picked that one.
Cool.
Yeah, and see
Nice.
what will happen with it.
No, that's cool, man. Very, very cool. And that's kind of an interesting texture of what you're doing here because, yeah, it's kind of brothers of the same kind of aggression, but in very different worlds. I very much agree. But hey, Matty, thank you so very much for doing this. I totally appreciate it. I love getting to talk to bands, especially bands that I personally enjoy. And your new record is, I've probably played it 10, 11 times already by now. Like, I totally dig it. If you ever come to the US and come to Florida, man, I will come see you. Absolutely. There's no questions. But again, keep doing what you're doing. I will hype this up as the best as I can. I will make sure the world knows about Golgothon Remains as best as I can as well too. But again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this very, very much, man.
Thank you so much for having us, Clint. It's like heaps appreciated having us here. It's great. Thank you for the support. We definitely hope to come out to America at one point, for sure. And because I want to see Venice Beach. But anyway,
there you go.
To name something. But yeah, thank you so much. Like doing a fucking great job, like promoting bands all over the world. And yeah, heaps appreciated. Thank you.
You're very well. Hey, man. Again, Clint from the Doorway too, hanging out with Matty from Golgothon Remains. Thank you again. You have a good one, man.
Cheers. See ya.